Good morning, everyone. So here. It is April 24th. The year keeps moving along rather rapidly. Man, the last time I remember saying the date was yesterday. But really, it seems to have jumped from April 15th to now. Not too much has happened in my world, except playing some LoL, winning some, losing some, as I am prone to do. The topic of this morning for our wake up rundown is junglers are dead. You're like, what do you mean junglers are dead? The junglers are stronger than ever. There's really been no indication that they're going away. Well, Riot has had this long-standing thing for like over a year, maybe 2 years, where they're like, we don't want jungling to be mandatory on teams. And now, of course, it's not mandatory when you get into the game, like at lower levels and people don't have their full rune sets and masteries. People don't jungle, and you just see, 5-on-5, everyone's in a lane. And I think their real issue with it is the jungler, for the most part, is just PvEing almost the entirety of the game. So why exactly should we have the jungler, have to be in this role where he's not interacting with people, except for, once every 5 minutes or so, as opposed to in lanes, you have a lot of back and forth, a lot more kind of, playing footsie, as some people call it, wherein people are really going against each other as opposed to just going against bots or, AI. But, despite all the changes Riot has made, no competitive teams have really picked up on the fact that you don't need a jungler. And no high elo games run without a jungler. Everyone always has a jungler, everyone always takes Smite. And I think that's important, I think that's good, and certainly I don't think anyone should be like running out there and be like, hey, we don't need a jungler, because you're probably going to get flamed in your team. But, do keep in mind that we probably don't need it anymore. And what do I mean by we probably don't need junglers anymore? I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 6 months ago, they changed it so solo lanes didn't get as much experience. Now, the real, consequence of that was that going 2v1 became really, really hard. And we see this in a number of tournaments. We've seen it in basically every single pro tournament over the past, half year perhaps, where it's not a case of there's no jungler, but it's a case of the AD carry and support switch lanes, and they can really zone out that solo person. And the team that is prepared for it takes teleport so that their solo lane can get a little more experience. But in general, the creeps they get are very minimal. They have to pick certain champions that can kind of farm while being harassed by a support and an AD carry, and moreover, they normally have to take teleport to even like survive in lane. To even survive. But that being said, they don't ever thrive in that position. What ends up happening is generally they keep on switching until the solos are matched up against each other, or they wait, 7 levels in, 6 levels in, wherein if they thought their solo had a disadvantage at the beginning of the game, they'll swap them up, and then they can swap back if they feel like their solo lane has an advantage. I think we saw this, like Gangplank took teleport and was able to farm just a little bit more than an Olaf, and then they switched back to the regular lanes, and it seemed to work out okay. But a lot of the times this has gone on, it's really backfired because the solo champion has been killed. Um, and killed very early on. And they don't generally take the turrets very early in like competitive play, just because they want their opponents to lose out the CS, and the best way for them to lose out CS is for the turrets to kill the minions. So you'll generally see pro players not even attack the turrets, even like if the opposition goes back. Now, this is different in solo queue. In solo queue, you'll see people try to rush down turrets, not really worrying about starving their opposition at a farm, but more interested in, taking control of the lane, giving everyone on their team that 150 gold, and getting a little more map presence. I don't know which way I like it better, but either way, I mean, the other thing to note is if you do take that tower and you're in a 2v1, well, that one person now might be able to freeze the lane way on their side of the map. Now, on the other hand, you can freeze the lane on your turret too, but it's a lot harder for whatever reason. When you have the advantage, like, people don't want to just, like, sit there and freeze a lane. But that is, the best thing to do to ensure that the opposition does not get those creeps to catch back up. Now you're saying, okay, well, this happened a long time ago. 2v1ing is really hard, but people have done it. People do it. They're not successful. What's changed more recently? Well, the most recent change was this one. Experience split when two or more champions are present increase. Situations with two or more champions splitting experience now earn 30.4% more total experience than solo, up from 26.1. And you're like, okay, well they earn 4% more experience. That's not that big of a deal. That's just like getting the mastery in experience. Well, it's not a huge deal, but what we've seen is like the solo actually doesn't get ahead of a dual lane. If you go 2v1, if you're playing that properly, you should be able to zone them out enough so they never get ahead of you. And when they do get ahead of you, like it will be maybe at level, they might hit level 5 just like a tick before you guys hit level 4, which isn't very substantial. And if you send them back or they don't have teleport or you zone them out even better than usual, then they won't even get ahead of you. And the jungler isn't going to be too far ahead of you. So the main issue then becomes, okay, well they have a jungler with roaming presence, they have dragon control, so on and so forth. You don't. Well, you don't really have to give up dragon control, and you don't have to give up jungle buffs or jungle creeps. And I kind of just thought about this, in a funny sort of way recently. I mean, top lane, if you pick a strong top laner, a lot of times they can run back and take your own double golems if you're purple side. And likewise, if you're blue side, the bottom lane can take away double golems. But in mid lane, for mid lane, the race already, like a lot of times in high level competition, are taken by the middle AP carries. So really, the jungler is only clearing, the big buffs, wolves, double golems with consistency, whereas the race are oftentimes taken away from them. Okay, well if you don't have a jungler, let the race go. What do you do about the buffs? Well, you still get the buffs. Get the buffs at level 1. Have your top lane, one person in your top lane take red, and have your mid take blue, or one person in the bottom lane take blue if your mid doesn't need it. Now, granted, if you're a weaker middle character, they are not going to be punished very much for pushing you up. So make sure you have someone that can, farm even while being pushed significantly. But in addition to taking those buffs and taking those race if you're the middle AP carry, the one thing I was thinking, well, an AP carry can generally run back and take his wolves too. And that's not too bad of an idea. It certainly gives them more farm. And, since those sigils now heal 40 mana instead of 30, that's a little bit better. You're not going to lose too much health or too much mana taking out those wolf camps or those wraith camps. So may as well go ahead and do that. The other thing, though, if you don't have an AP middle character, or you're feeling or like that can farm really fast, or you're feeling like you're being pressured, what you do is just kill the big wolf and kill one of the small wolves. So when their jungler comes to counter jungle you, there's only one wolf there. And they've just wasted a lot of time. Now, to make sure that goes well, you should keep on checking up on the wolves, so if they do come and kill them, then you clear them out and do the same thing. Essentially counter jungle their jungler, so that their jungler cannot get, like, 2 jungles full of minions. Make sure he only gets, one little camp. If he walks all the way to pick up that one small wolf, he's wasting a ton of time, because it's like, 5 gold and, minuscule amounts of experience. So that's kind of, my thought, wherein I don't think you need a jungler. I think if you have, send a 2v1 top, you can completely zone out that 2v1. The thing is, you have to zone them out enough so that your combination up top exceeds their combination. Meaning, your attack damage, carry and support who might go up top, have to get more CS than both their solo lane and their jungle combined. And now that's kind of iffy. Yes, I think that should be what happens. But also consider that the jungler is getting a lot of creeps that aren't worth quite as much gold as the lane creeps. So I think that even though like junglers will can sometimes get ahead in numbers, I don't think the value of the creeps they kill is quite as much. Now I could be wrong, but like for example the Wraith camp, I think you get 5 gold for the little ones and 35 for the big one, and that might change throughout the game, but I think that's the starting number. So that's like 45 gold for 4 creeps. Is that right? It's 50 gold for 4 creeps. So, I mean, it's like 11, 12 and a half, I guess. 12 and a half gold per creep, whereas the, creeps in the lane are generally like, over 20. So even if the number isn't there, you just want to make sure your, combined gold is a little bit ahead. And of course, you can also take down that early tower, which gives you better map presence. And you don't necessarily have to go 2 top. You get to send 3 bottom. I've always been a fan of sending 3 bottom. Because with certain lineups, there's like almost no way, unless their jungler sits there the entire time, which defeats the point of a jungler, and that jungler won't be. And the whole thing about this is they're like, oh, well, why doesn't the jungler just camp in the lane? Well, he can do this, but that defeats the point of a jungler getting that extra farm. He's also going to have Smite, which, is still a nice summoner spell to, secure the buffs and, objectives. But, a jungler generally isn't very good in a 2v1 situation or a 2v2 situation, like Udyr, Shyvana, Mundo to a lesser extent, but mainly like Udyr and Shyvana aren't really great when they can be kited by two people, when they can be poked by two people. Now, certainly they're really good in one-on-one situations, they're good in small skirmishes, but they can't really get on top of their opposition, especially Shyvana before 6, and, Udyr needs some levels in bear stance, but you can always, if you have like a little bit of CC, you can pretty much kite him around, and so long as you know where those two people are, they're not going to be too scary. So that's kind of my concept, and I would love to see it in play more wherein there is no jungle. You might think, oh, you hate junglers, this is why you're doing this. No, I love jungling. I love playing a jungle. I actually, kind of find it more peaceful to like not be involved in the PvP like scene the whole time. I like looking around the map, seeing where I can help, what I can do to their jungler, how I can counter jungle, when we can take advantage of objectives. But I feel like, yeah, sometimes it is unfair. Not that jungling is necessarily disliked, but I think it is disliked more than the other roles. I think, jungling and support are the two roles that most people prefer not to play. Um, that might change, and I think it does change when, jungles get stronger. Like right when Season 2 came out, junglers were incredibly strong. But as it is now, junglers are like, so-so. And, I feel like if you properly counter jungle your own jungle, if you take your buffs on time, you will really dominate, both the lanes. The 2v2 lane, if you have a red buff, for instance, if you're on blue side and you take that early red buff, and or on the other side, if you're purple side, you take the red buff too, and you can dominate top lane. That's a 2v1 situation, and you'll be really dominant because there's only so many champions like that can farm from range, but a lot of them require that you get like multiple levels. For example, like Morgana, I think we saw SK or someone send Morgana down to counter. Was it SK? I don't know. It was someone to counter. No, it must not have been SK because I think it was a IPL4, and they were playing against Picture of a Goose. Might have been Curse. Essentially, what happened was there was a kill lane bottom, Jarvan Leona, which is kind of a Picture of a Goose who's now MTWNA. That's kind of like their signature lane, and it's really really effective. But they sent down a Morgana bottom, and not that the Morgana got a lot of farm, but since she had a couple levels under her belt, she was able to like Tormented Soil and pick up a couple of creeps, which is important. That being said, for Morgana to be able to do that, you generally need level 5. You normally need level 3 Tormented Soil. To be able to farm those creeps, and a lot of times it takes you a really long time to get to level 5 if you're being zoned out by that kill lane. So that's something to keep in mind. Even the champions that are good at farming creeps from a distance, generally they need a couple of levels to be able to do so, to do it with any safety. Anyways, we're going to get some solo queue going. Thanks for tuning in for the Wake Up Rundown. Hope you enjoyed.